Last night, more than 1,000 people gathered at campus marches to protest all of the tragedies that we have seen across the country this week. From Minnesota to Louisiana to Dallas, people everywhere looking for justice and change. Joining me now to talk about the issues we are facing is Austin McCoy, a postdoctoral fellow. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, thanks for having me.
Now, you have spent years studying progressive social movements of the 70s and 80s. When you heard about the shootings again in Louisiana and Minnesota, what did you think?
The first thing I thought was, here we go again. It had been a while since we've had any high-profile police shootings of African Americans. And, there were, folks have been organizing, in Detroit, Chicago, in Ann Arbor, where I go to school. But we hadn't seen, this issue, thrusted into the forefront of the nation's consciousness. And I think part of that has to do with the presidential election, sort of sucks out, all of the inertia, when it comes to thinking about, other social movements going on. But yeah, these killings, threw me back to 2013 when Trayvon Martin was killed, and thinking, wow, okay, so we're still under threat. We still feel unsafe when it comes to interacting with police officers, or, just in general, if we're in large groups or in protests and, officers might be around, we don't know what to expect.
Is that your general feeling too? How does your reaction when you are around police differ when it may not be an officer who is a black officer?
Right. I mean, it depends on the situation. If it's a traffic stop, I tend to get more tense because you just never know what could happen, and a lot of these killings are a result of these routine stops. If it's an event, if I'm at a concert or some other event, I feel a little more safe because it's not all the attention is directed towards me. Now, during a protest, that's different. I do some organizing in Ann Arbor, or I have done some organizing in Ann Arbor, and we've had some direct action protests. And yeah, when you're engaged in these sorts of tactics, then you tend to feel less safe because you just never know how the police might respond to your protests.
Of course, also, late Thursday night, we hear about the devastation in Dallas, 5 officers killed in the line of duty. When you hear about that also, what did you think about the climate that we're in? I mean, again, just utter tragedy there.
Yeah, I mean, it was a terrible situation, and I think our political climate, it's sort of a poisonous climate at this point. I mean, we're very polarized. There are a lot of Americans who are frustrated when it comes to particular issues such as immigration, jobs, but then also African Americans, we, suffer from disproportionate, police killings. 1 in 3 African American men they might spend time in jail. The wealth gap, between African Americans and white Americans is still increasing. There's economic inequality. So there are these structural problems that sort of feed into this distrust, of institutions, of politicians, but then there are real problems that African Americans are facing today that inform our responses to policing in our communities.
And based on all the studies that you've done, all of your education in this, when we heard from one of the protesters at last night's rally, he kind of summed it up and said, you know what, I feel like it's a powder keg kind of situation. We need to do something to calm the tensions and move forward together. Based on your perspective, how do we do that? What can we do? Right.
Well, the first thing, I mean, this reminds me of I'm thinking of 1967 in Newark when there was, uprisings there, but then also a week later in Detroit. And then after the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. in 1968, more than 100 cities, folks took to the streets. There was violent uprisings. And, these were all in responses to structural racism. Even the federal government, through the, Kerner Commission report that was released in 68, made the same claim. There are 2 nations living in this country, black and white, and they're moving apart. And they have continued to move apart. Even today, and I think this is what we're seeing. So the first thing that we can do is folks who are concerned with police community relations or police violence, obviously the first thing we need to do is organize, and we need to try to find solutions, whether they're short-term reforms such as creating a citizen review board to try to hold officers accountable. That's something that a group that I've been working with in Ann Arbor, or had worked with in Ann Arbor, now they're called the Ann Arbor Alliance for Black Lives, you know, we've had folks who worked with the Human Rights Commission there to try to put together a Citizens Review Board. Now, the police chief there, he doesn't support it, but my argument for Citizens Review Board, even if you believe that your police culture is progressive, or if you believe that you police well, more accountability, more transparency is always a good thing. More democracy in these institutions will make folks who are police feel more comfortable with police. Then obviously, like, there's the other tactics such as making sure police are connected to the more connected to the community, making sure that police aren't seeing African Americans and other people of color as instant threats.
Okay, Austin McCoy, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your perspective on this. Thank you so much.